In the heart of a busy corporate tower, where glass walls reflected power and ambition, a simple moment unfolded that would teach everyone in the room a timeless lesson. A white CEO, proud, accomplished, and firm in his authority, decided to test one of his youngest employees, a black woman who worked quietly in the corner of the office. She wasn't the loudest in meetings. She didn't carry the most prestigious degree on her resume, but she carried something deeper: perseverance, humility, and the burning desire to prove that she belonged. One afternoon, he handed her a single sheet of paper. "Translate this," he said with a tone that suggested a challenge more than a request. "And then, I'll release your salary." The room grew tense. Some employees shifted uncomfortably, while others whispered, wondering how she would respond. For many, it seemed unfair, an unnecessary hurdle placed before someone simply trying to do her job. But she didn't protest. She didn't argue. She simply nodded, took the paper, and carried it back to her desk. What happened next was not just an act of work. It was an act of courage. Within hours, she returned, not with one translation, but with 3. English, French, and Spanish. She placed the neatly written pages on his desk and said, with quiet confidence, "Here, you go." The CEO, a man who had built his empire on competition and control, stared at her work in stunned silence. In that moment, he realized something profound: true talent is not proven by tests of power, but by the resilience and dedication of those who rise above them. This young woman's story reminds us that greatness is not measured by the titles we hold or the barriers placed before us. It is measured by how we respond, whether we allow challenges to break us or to sharpen us into something stronger. All across our communities, stories like this unfold every day. Ordinary people, often overlooked, are doing extraordinary things. A single mother balancing 2 jobs while finishing her degree at night. A retiree volunteering to teach children how to read. A young man who refuses to give up on his small business even when the odds are stacked against him. They are the heartbeat of our neighborhoods, the quiet strength of our society, the unseen foundation of our future. And yet, too often, their worth is doubted, their potential underestimated. This story challenges us all, CEOs, neighbors, to see beyond the surface and recognize the brilliance in every person we encounter. Because progress does not come from division or doubt. It comes from unity, from lifting each other up, from believing that no one's value is determined by their background, their skin color, or their circumstances. This young woman did not just translate words. She translated resilience into action, doubt into proof, challenge into triumph. Her story calls on us to do the same. Whatever page life hands us, whether it be heavy with obstacles or filled with uncertainty, let us rise to the challenge. Let us write our own translation of hope, courage, and progress. And let us remember, when we believe in ourselves, when we persevere through the tests placed before us, and when we choose unity over division, there is no limit to what we can achieve. There are moments in life when the trials before us appear, at first glance, to be about ability. Whether we are smart enough, quick enough, or talented enough to perform the task at hand. Yet, beneath the surface, these trials often reveal something far deeper. They become examinations not of what we know, but of who we are. In the story of the CEO and his young employee, this truth rises with clarity. When the paper was handed to her, it was framed as a test of skill. Could she translate it? Could she complete the work to his expectations? To an outsider, this was the only challenge. But to those who looked closer, the real question was one of character. Would she crumble under pressure? Would she protest the unfairness of being singled out? Or would she summon an inner strength that could not be measured by words alone? Every generation faces its own version of this test. For some, it comes in the form of discrimination, being underestimated, or being asked to prove worth again and again in the face of doubt. For others, it comes through setbacks in business, personal failures, or moments of despair when the world seems to offer little support. The test looks different in each circumstance, but the essence remains the same when confronted with adversity. Who will you be? The young woman's response was not loud, not angry, not defensive. She simply chose to rise. She accepted the task, knowing that the weight of the moment was more than just about translation. It was about dignity. It was about perseverance. It was about embodying the truth that character is forged not when life is easy, but when it demands more than what seems fair. Skill can be taught. Degrees can be earned. Experience can be gained. But character is revealed only in the crucible of challenge. The greatest leaders in history, the pioneers who shaped nations and movements, were not merely skilled individuals. They were people who stood firm when tested. They were people whose integrity and strength of spirit carried them through moments of doubt, ridicule, seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Think of the countless individuals in our neighborhoods and communities who live this truth every day. The father who works 2 jobs to ensure his children never go to bed hungry. The immigrant mother who learns a new language late at night after her shift, determined to build a better life for her family. The student who studies in the quiet of a dimly lit library, facing not only academic challenges, but the burden of being told she does not belong. None of these people are tested only on skill. They are tested on their capacity to persevere, their refusal to surrender to hardship, their ability to let character shine when the world is waiting for them to fail. When the young woman returned with her 3 translations, it was not simply an answer to a request. It was a declaration. I will not let your doubts define me. I will let my actions speak for me. That is the power of character. It shifts the narrative from victimhood to victory, from proving oneself to transcending expectations altogether. And in this story, as in life, the lesson is clear. A test may begin as a measure of skill, but the outcome is often a reflection of something greater. Skill is what allows us to do a task. Character is what allows us to endure, to rise, and to transform the very meaning of the task itself. Life, in its unpredictable rhythm, rarely offers us a perfectly level playing field. For many, the path forward is marked not just with the challenges of hard work, but also with the weight of unfairness. There are moments when we are asked to prove ourselves more than others, when we are questioned not because of what we lack, but because of where we come from, how we look, or simply because someone in power believes we should be tested. These moments sting, they feel unjust, unnecessary, and undeserved. Yet, it is in these very moments that the true depth of human strength is revealed. When the young woman in the story was handed that piece of paper, it was not a simple request. It was a reminder of inequality. Others were not asked to jump through hoops to receive what was already owed to them. Yet she was. That is unfairness in its clearest form. But what sets her apart is how she responded. She did not let bitterness consume her. She did not throw the paper back in defiance, though perhaps many would have understood if she did. Instead, she turned what was meant to be a barrier into a stage, a place where she could show not just her competence but her resilience. Rising above unfairness does not mean ignoring it. It does not mean pretending it doesn't hurt or pretending it isn't wrong. Rising above unfairness means refusing to let it define who you are or limit what you are capable of achieving. It is the quiet decision to keep moving, to keep producing, to keep showing the world that while unfairness may be real, it does not have the final word. Throughout history, some of the greatest breakthroughs in human progress have come from people who faced extraordinary unfairness yet chose to rise. Think of those who marched for civil rights, who worked not just against legal obstacles, but also against daily prejudice and systemic exclusion. Their victories were not only about new laws or new rights, their victories were about showing that dignity, determination, and moral courage are stronger than injustice. In every workplace, in every school, in every community, there are people who face unfairness daily. A child judged by her accent. A worker dismissed because of his age. A woman overlooked in meetings even though her ideas could transform the company. These are not isolated cases. They are reminders of the imbalance that exists in human systems. But when we see individuals rise, when we see them respond with excellence, patience, and persistence, we witness something greater than fairness. We witness the human spirit's ability to transcend. The young woman's act of translating that page into 3 languages was more than just a task completed. It was an act of resistance wrapped in grace. It said to the world, "You may try to diminish me, but I will not diminish myself. You may place obstacles in my path, but I will turn them into stepping stones." That is the true essence of rising above unfairness. It is not about denying the pain of inequality, but about choosing to walk through it with dignity intact. And there is something else powerful here. Rising above unfairness does not only transform the individual who endures it, it often transforms those who witness it. The CEO and everyone else in that room saw a lesson play out before their eyes. They saw that when you attempt to minimize another human being, you may instead elevate them to a place where their strength and brilliance shine even brighter. This is why rising above unfairness is so vital, not because we should accept injustice as normal, but because in choosing to rise, we reclaim power. We remind ourselves that dignity cannot be taken away, that self-worth cannot be handed over, and that our response to injustice can be stronger than the injustice itself. In a world that often rewards the loudest voices, the boldest gestures, and the most visible displays of power, there is something profoundly moving about quiet confidence. It does not shout, it does not demand, and it does not need constant recognition. Quiet confidence is the steady presence that enters a room and changes the atmosphere without uttering a single word. It is the strength that lies beneath the surface, visible not through volume, but through action, persistence, and integrity. When the young woman was asked to complete her task, she did not argue, nor did she create a spectacle to prove herself. She did not seek sympathy, nor did she rely on grand declarations. Instead, she embodied quiet confidence. She walked back to her desk with composure, carried the weight of the challenge with calm dignity, and let her work do the speaking for her. There was no need to convince anyone of her capability. Her actions would become her voice. This kind of confidence is rare in a culture that prizes instant validation. It does not chase applause, and it does not shrink when overlooked. Quiet confidence understands something timeless. That true strength is not in proving yourself to everyone, but in knowing yourself well enough that you no longer need to. It rests in the knowledge that worth is not determined by others' perception, but by one's own conviction. History has been shaped not only by the bold proclamations of leaders, but also by the quiet resolve of those who endured hardship without fanfare. The farmer who continued to till his land during seasons of drought, believing in a harvest that others doubted. The teacher who worked tirelessly with children who had been written off, patiently nurturing their potential until it blossomed. The nurse who cared for patients during times of crisis, working quietly through long nights without expectation of recognition. These people may not have shouted their contributions from the rooftops, but their quiet confidence changed lives, shaped communities, and left legacies that endure long after their names are forgotten. Quiet confidence is not about silence in the face of injustice, nor is it about passivity. It is about presence. It is about walking into difficult circumstances with a calm assurance that one's strength is sufficient for the challenge. It is about choosing to act, even when others doubt, and to let results speak where words would fail. This is the confidence that cannot be shaken by skepticism, cannot be diminished by prejudice, and cannot be erased by unfairness. The young woman's response carried this kind of power. She did not storm out of the room. She did not return with an angry speech or demand recognition. Instead, she returned with her work, completed not once, but 3 times over, as if to say, "I am more than enough, and I will prove it without raising my voice." That is the essence of quiet confidence. It is unbending, unyielding, and unshaken by the noise around it. In our own lives, we are often tempted to believe that success must be loud, that we must constantly prove ourselves in dramatic ways to be seen. But the truth is, some of the most powerful transformations happen quietly. A decision to keep going one more day, a choice to work in silence when no one is watching, a commitment to excellence even when recognition never comes. These small, unseen acts of confidence build the foundation of greatness. Quiet confidence also has the ability to disarm. It unsettles those who expect resistance and confuses those who anticipate weakness. It creates a moment of pause where others must reconsider their assumptions. This is why it is so powerful. It shifts the balance of power without a single confrontation. It reminds the world that strength does not always need to roar. Sometimes it is found in the steady, unwavering resolve of a person who knows exactly who they are. There are moments when a simple act becomes more than just the sum of its parts. What appears ordinary on the surface carries a truth so profound that it speaks far beyond the task itself. When the young woman returned not with one translation, but three, she delivered something greater than words in another language. She delivered a message that transcended culture, color, and circumstance. Talent knows no boundaries, and determination cannot be confined by expectation. On that desk lay English, French, and Spanish, 3 languages, bridges across different worlds, and 3 testaments to her ability. Yet the real message was not about fluency. It was about possibility. It was about showing that human potential is vast, that brilliance is not bound to one skill or one dimension, and that when given a chance, many can offer far more than what is asked of them. The act of presenting 3 translations reflected something universal. It reminded everyone in that room that human beings are not defined by a single role, a single label, or a single impression. Too often, people are placed into boxes, judged by stereotypes, confined by expectations, or limited by the narrow vision of others. But when those boxes are broken, when someone steps forward with more than what the world expected, it forces everyone to rethink what they thought was possible. Her choice to go beyond the request was a quiet rebellion against limitation. She was not asked for 3 translations, yet she delivered them. In that decision, she proved a truth that echoes through every story of perseverance. When the world tries to measure you by its small expectations, you can answer with extraordinary effort that expands the boundaries for everyone watching. Throughout history, humanity has advanced because individuals offered more than what was asked, who pursued discoveries no one thought necessary, artists who created beauty in times of despair, and leaders who dreamed beyond the scope of their present circumstances. Their work carried the same message. Progress is born when people refuse to stop at enough, and instead pursue excellence beyond measure. 3 translations, one message's greatness is not confined to what others demand of you. It comes from what you demand of yourself. The young woman did not stop at the minimum because her standard was not defined by the challenge before her. It was defined by the belief she held about her own capacity. That belief, when acted upon, created a ripple of impact that reached far beyond her desk. There is something deeply symbolic about her choice of 3 languages. Language itself is a bridge between worlds. Ishrups, a way of connecting people who might otherwise never understand each other. By bringing multiple translations, she demonstrated not only her skill but also the broader truth that connection across differences is possible in a world often divided by barriers, racial, cultural, economic. Her work stood as a quiet metaphor for unity. She showed that the ability to bridge divides is one of the most powerful skills of all. In every community, there are people who embody this same spirit. A neighbor who offers more kindness than expected. A teacher who spends extra hours with a struggling student. A worker who stays late to ensure the job is not just finished, but done with excellence. These acts may not always be seen or celebrated, but they carry the same message as those 3 translations. The human spirit is capable of more than others imagine, and its impact multiplies when it goes beyond the expected. The lesson is clear. When we are handed a task, we can choose to do only what is required, or we can choose to let the moment reveal our true depth. The young woman's 3 translations remind us that extraordinary results often come from ordinary opportunities approached with extraordinary determination. Barriers have always existed. Some are visible, like locked doors, laws, and walls. Others are invisible, like prejudice, low expectations, or unspoken assumptions about who belongs and who does not. These barriers are powerful because they are designed not only to block progress, but to make those on the other side doubt their own worth. Yet history tells us that time and again, barriers fall, not because they disappear on their own, but because someone refuses to be defined by them and instead breaks through with undeniable brilliance. In the story of the young woman and the CEO, the paper was not just a task, it was a barrier. It was placed before her as a subtle way of saying, prove yourself again, and only then will you receive what is already yours. For many, that barrier would have felt like an insult too heavy to bear. But instead of letting it diminish her, she allowed it to become a canvas for her brilliance. She translated the document not once, but 3 times, each version flawless and precise. In doing so, she shattered the barrier, not by force, but by sheer excellence. This is the nature of brilliance. It does not always announce itself with grandeur. Sometimes it arrives in the form of quiet mastery, in the form of work done so well that no one can deny its power. And when brilliance meets barriers, the outcome is transformative. The barrier that was meant to diminish suddenly becomes the stage on which greatness is revealed. Consider the barriers faced by countless pioneers throughout history. There were times when education was denied to women, yet brilliant minds like Marie Curie pushed forward, transforming science forever. There were times when the color of one's skin was seen as a disqualification, yet leaders like Frederick Douglass and Nelson Mandela used their brilliance not only to overcome, but to rewrite the course of history. There were moments when poverty seemed an unbreakable wall, yet individuals with vision and persistence built businesses, wrote books, discovered cures, and changed the world. In every story, the pattern is the same: barriers are placed to limit, but brilliance, expressed through courage, persistence, breaks them open. The young woman's act was not loud, nor was it dramatic, but it was brilliant. Her translation spoke louder than words of protest could have. They prove that while barriers may exist, they cannot hold back the light of someone who chooses to rise above them. That brilliance was her quiet weapon, her undeniable proof that she belonged, and her way of breaking through the walls placed before her. Barriers are not only external. Many of the most powerful barriers lie within us. Fear, self-doubt, insecurity, or the haunting voices of those who told us we are not good enough. These barriers are no less real, and in some ways, they are more dangerous because they are invisible, but brilliance has the power to break through these as well. When we choose to act with courage, when we dedicate ourselves to excellence, when we persist despite the voice of doubt, we find that our own brilliance is stronger than any wall of fear. In communities across the world, ordinary people break barriers every day with brilliance. A student in a small town who is the first in her family to graduate from college. A young entrepreneur who starts a business with nothing but determination and vision. A nurse who saves lives with skill and compassion in conditions where resources are scarce. Each one faces obstacles that could have stopped them. Yet each one proves that barriers are no match for brilliance fueled by perseverance. The young woman's story captures this truth in a single moment. What was designed as a barrier became her platform. What was meant to test her worth instead revealed her strength. By choosing to respond with brilliance, she transformed the moment and reminded everyone watching that barriers are temporary, but excellence endures. Greatness is often spoken of as if it belongs only to a chosen few. Leaders whose names appear in history books, innovators whose inventions reshape the world, or public figures whose voices echo across generations. Yet the truth is far simpler. Far more inspiring. Greatness is not reserved for the famous. It lives in the actions of ordinary people who, when faced with extraordinary circumstances, choose courage, persistence, and integrity over fear, resignation, and silence. The story of the young woman translating not one page, but 3 is not about a celebrated figure standing on a global stage. It is about someone who might otherwise go unnoticed. An employee working quietly in her office, fulfilling her duties with dedication. But in that moment, her decision to rise beyond expectation transformed her from ordinary to extraordinary. She did not wait for recognition, nor did she need applause. Her action itself was proof of her strength. This is the beauty of extraordinary actions. They rarely begin with grand intention. More often, they begin with small choices. The choice to show up even when no one is watching. The choice to work harder when it would be easier to give up. The choice to maintain dignity when faced with unfairness. These decisions may seem minor, but they create ripples that expand far beyond the moment itself. Think of the countless acts of quiet heroism that happen in everyday life. A teacher in an overcrowded classroom who stays after hours to help a struggling student finally understand. A bus driver who greets each passenger with kindness, lifting spirits on a weary morning. A young person who stands up for a classmate being bullied, despite the risk of becoming a target themselves. These individuals are not performing their actions on a stage, but their choices are extraordinary nonetheless. Ordinary people have always been the foundation of progress. When we look back at the great movements that shaped nations, they were built not only by iconic leaders, but by countless individuals whose names we may never know. Farmers who boycotted, Workers who marched, parents who taught their children resilience despite hardship. It was their collective courage that carried history forward. Their extraordinary actions, born from ordinary lives, became the unseen threads that wove change into reality. The young woman's act of delivering 3 translations reflects this same spirit. It was not done to win an award or secure fame. It was simply the result of her refusal to give less than her best, even when confronted with an unfair demand. Her extraordinary action, though quiet, spoke volumes. It told the world that the ordinary moments we face can become extraordinary when we approach them with determination, creativity, and courage. Extraordinary actions often come from those who are underestimated. Society tends to overlook those who work in silence, those who are marginalized, those whose voices are not always heard. Yet it is precisely in these places where extraordinary strength is born. When faced with challenges, these individuals learn to draw on resilience that others may never develop. And when the opportunity comes to act, their response carries a power that surprises and inspires everyone around them. There is also a profound humility in extraordinary actions. Unlike acts performed for recognition, these moments do not depend on applause. They come from within, from a deep sense of responsibility, pride, or compassion. Humility is part of what makes them so powerful. They remind us that greatness is not about being seen. It is about doing what is right, even when no one notices. Every community is filled with stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Parents sacrificing for their children's futures. Volunteers dedicating their time to causes that may never make headlines. Workers who, despite obstacles, commit themselves to excellence because they know their contribution matters. These are the stories that sustain hope and inspire belief in a better tomorrow. The young woman's translations symbolize this larger truth. Extraordinary does not mean unattainable. It does not mean rare. It means that in the ordinary flow of life, each of us holds the ability to rise when the moment calls. It means that greatness lies not in the grand, but in the courage, persistence, and dignity with which ordinary people respond to their challenges. Leadership has long been misunderstood as the ability to command, to direct, or to enforce authority. Too often, it is equated with the privilege of issuing orders and the power to test others. But real leadership is not measured by the control one holds over people. It is measured by the capacity to recognize the value in others, to uplift their potential, to see not just what they can do for you, but who they are and what they can become. The CEO in this story believed that his power lay in his ability to test his employee, to decide whether she deserved her due based on his terms. This is a common flaw in the way authority is exercised in many places, whether in corporations, institutions, or even families. Leaders too often believe that respect comes from making others prove themselves. Yet, what the young woman demonstrated was that true strength does not come from testing people, but from believing in them. True leadership is not about setting barriers, it is about removing them. Recognition is the cornerstone of authentic leadership. It is not just the acknowledgement of talent, it is the honoring of dignity. To recognize someone is to say, I see you. I see your effort. I see your worth, even when the world underestimates you. And when people feel seen, they are empowered to give the very best of themselves, not out of fear or obligation, but out of pride and purpose. Think of the greatest leaders in history. Their legacy was not built on their ability to control, but on their ability to recognize. Abraham Lincoln saw the possibility of unity in a nation fractured by division. Eleanor Roosevelt saw the potential of voices that had been silenced. Martin Luther King Jr. saw the dignity in those who had been told they were less. Nelson Mandela recognized humanity even in his oppressors. Each of these leaders proved that leadership is not about standing above others, but about lifting others up until they, too, can stand tall. In every workplace, in every community, the difference between authority and leadership becomes clear. Authority demands compliance. Leadership inspires commitment. Authority enforces rules. Leadership awakens responsibility. Authority can instill fear. Leadership instills confidence. What makes the difference is recognition. The ability of a leader to see beyond their own position and to understand the worth of those they lead. The young woman's act of brilliance forced recognition upon her CEO. In that moment, he was confronted with the reality that his authority alone could not define her. Her skill, her persistence, her dignity, these spoke louder than his test. And in that silence, he faced the truth of leadership, that the real power he held was not in withholding her salary, but in recognizing the extraordinary person standing before him. Recognition is not only powerful in formal positions of leadership, it is something each of us can practice in daily life. When a teacher recognizes the effort of a struggling student, that child gains the confidence to keep trying. When an employer recognizes the dedication of a worker, that worker feels valued and motivated to continue. When a parent recognizes the small victories of their child, that child learns to believe in themselves. Recognition is the soil in which perseverance grows. True leadership demands humility. It requires setting aside ego long enough to see the brilliance of others. It means asking not, "How can they serve me?" but, "How can I help them grow?" It means understanding that every success in an organization, in a community, in a nation, is not the result of one person's authority, but the collective contribution of many who are willing to give their best when they feel valued. Recognition has the power to transform environments. A workplace without recognition feels cold, transactional, and draining. But a workplace where leaders see their employees' worth becomes vibrant, creative, and alive with possibility. A community without recognition feels divided and disheartened, but a community where people see and honor each other's dignity becomes strong, united, and full of hope. The story of the CEO and his employee is a reminder of this truth. Recognition is not optional. It is the very essence of leadership. Without it, authority is hollow. With it, even the smallest act of encouragement can awaken extraordinary potential in those who have been overlooked. The strength of any community, organization, or nation lies not in sameness, but in the richness of its differences. Diversity is not a challenge to overcome, it is a gift to embrace. It brings together voices that would otherwise never meet, ideas that would otherwise never be shared, perspectives that would otherwise never be seen. And when diversity is met with unity, when different identities, cultures, and experiences are woven together into a shared purpose, the result is nothing short of extraordinary. The young woman's 3 translations symbolize this truth with clarity: English, French, and Spanish. 3 different languages, each carrying its own history, rhythm, and beauty. Yet when placed side by side, they did not compete with one another. Instead, they complemented one another. Together, they told a story of connection, showing that while human beings may speak in many tongues, the values of perseverance, dignity, and excellence are universal. This is the essence of unity in diversity. It does not mean erasing differences or pretending they do not exist. It means valuing those differences as sources of strength. It means recognizing that brilliance does not come in a single form, nor does it belong to a single group. Brilliance emerges when varied talents, cultures, and perspectives are allowed to stand together, enriching the whole. History has proven this time and again. The greatest innovations have often come from the meeting of different worlds. Trade routes did not only carry goods, they carried knowledge, art, and wisdom across continents. Immigrants arriving in new lands brought with them not only their labor, but their songs, their recipes, their traditions, and their ideas, all of which enriched the societies they entered. Scientific breakthroughs were born when mathematicians, engineers, and philosophers of different cultures built upon each other's discoveries. Unity in diversity has always been humanity's hidden engine of progress, and yet diversity on its own is not enough. Without unity, diversity can fragment. It can divide into silos, with each group clinging to its own perspective, unwilling to listen to the other. True strength comes only when diversity is woven together by respect, recognition, and shared purpose. Unity does not demand uniformity, it demands harmony. Like the instruments of an orchestra, each voice has its own tone, but when played together, they create music far greater than any single note could achieve. In every workplace, this truth holds power. A team that draws on different perspectives is stronger than one where everyone thinks alike. Creativity thrives when voices from varied backgrounds contribute ideas. Solutions to complex problems emerge more quickly when people approach them from different angles. But for this diversity to become an advantage, it must be honored, respected, and united by a shared vision. The young woman's act of translating into 3 languages offers a living metaphor for this principle. She showed that language, like culture, can be different yet equal, distinct yet united. Her translations did not erase the difference. They celebrated it. They revealed that diversity, when embraced, can be the very thing that carries a message across boundaries and into new possibilities. Unity in diversity is not only about skill and perspective, it is about humanity. When people from different races, genders, religions, and walks of life come together, they bring more than just varied expertise. They bring empathy, resilience, and stories that broaden our understanding of what it means to be human. Each person carries a piece of truth that another may not see. When those pieces are put together, the picture becomes whole. There are countless examples of this all around us. In communities where neighbors of different backgrounds work side by side, trust is built across divides. In schools where children learn from classmates whose lives look different from their own, tolerance and compassion take root. In nations where policies embrace diversity as a strength, societies grow more innovative, more resilient, and more just. Unity in diversity is not always easy. It requires humility to listen to voices unlike our own. It requires courage to step out of comfort zones and build relationships across differences. But it is always worth it, because the alternative, division, exclusion, and isolation, weakens us all. The young woman's 3 translations remind us that our differences are not threats, they are bridges. They remind us that humanity's greatest strength lies not in what makes us the same, but in how we bring our differences together to serve a greater purpose. There is a kind of strength that does not roar, does not strike, and does not clamor for attention. It is not the strength of domination or aggression, but of composure, patience, and resolve. It is the strength found in silence, the kind of silence that speaks louder than words, the kind that leaves those who underestimate you disarmed, and the kind that carries the weight of dignity no circumstance can take away. When the young woman was given her test, she could have answered with indignation. She could have raised her voice, argued about fairness, or demanded to be treated like everyone else. Many would have expected that reaction. Many would have justified it. But she chose another path. She chose silence, not the silence of weakness, but the silence of strength. She walked back to her desk, accepted the weight of the moment, and poured her energy not into words of protest, but into actions of proof. This is the paradox of strength in silence. To the outside world, silence can appear passive. It can look like surrender. But true silence is often restrained. It is the ability to hold back words that would do little to change minds, and instead focus on what will make the deepest impact. Silence, when paired with resilience, can become a force more powerful than noise. Throughout history, kind of silence has carried entire movements. Think of the sit-ins during the civil rights era, where young people walked into diners and quietly took their seats, refusing to move. They did not shout. They did not fight, was their protest, their composure, their defiance, and it spoke louder than any chant could have. Or think of Mahatma Gandhi's marches, was not emptiness but a statement, an insistence that dignity cannot be stripped away, no matter the force of oppression. Strength in silence is the ability to let your very presence communicate resistance, courage, and determination. Can also be deeply personal. It is the worker who listens to criticism without lashing out, knowing that their excellence will speak louder than any rebuttal. It is the parent who carries heavy burdens without complaint, showing love and stability even when life feels overwhelming. It is the student who quietly studies late into the night, unseen and uncelebrated, preparing for a tomorrow that will prove their potential. Each of these examples shows that silence, when chosen with purpose, is not weakness. It is strength in its purest form. The young woman's silence became her shield. It allowed her to preserve her dignity in a moment designed to diminish her. By not reacting to the provocation, she kept control of her narrative. She refused to let the test define her. Instead, she defined herself by her response. And when she returned with her work, 3 translations completed flawlessly, that silence roared. It left the room in awe. It shifted the balance of power without a single word exchanged. There is also wisdom in silence. In a world saturated with noise, where voices compete to be the loudest, silence forces attention. It makes people stop and think. It makes results, not rhetoric, the focus. Silence gives space for truth to emerge more clearly. It does not seek to convince through argument but through undeniable evidence. And that is precisely what the young woman accomplished. Yet, strength in silence does not mean silence forever. It is not about accepting injustice as permanent. It is about choosing the right moment, the right way, and the right medium through which to speak. Sometimes the most powerful message is not delivered through words, but through action. Sometimes it is not shouted, but shown. And when the moment comes, that quiet strength leaves an impact that lingers long after the noise has faded. In our own lives, we are often confronted with situations that test our resolve. There are times when speaking out is necessary and right. But there are also times when the greatest demonstration of strength is silence, silence that reflects patience, discipline, and the confidence to let your work, your choices, and your perseverance do the talking. In silence is not about saying nothing. It is about ensuring that when you finally do speak, your voice carries the weight of undeniable truth. There are few forces in life as powerful as perseverance. It is the quiet determination that refuses to be defeated by obstacles, the steady drive that continues forward when others would have stopped, and the relentless hope that tomorrow holds possibilities worth striving for. Perseverance speaks to every culture, every generation, and every individual who has ever faced hardship. It does not need translation because it is written in the human spirit. When the young woman was given her assignment, she was not simply asked to demonstrate a skill. She was tested in resilience. A page to translate may have seemed like a simple task, but the conditions under which it was demanded revealed something deeper. The request carried doubt, perhaps even disrespect, but she did not allow those shadows to dictate her response. Instead, she embraced the challenge as an opportunity. With patience, with discipline, and with quiet strength, she translated the page not once, not twice, but 3 times. Each language carried its own words, but behind all of them was one unspoken truth: perseverance has no boundaries. This is why perseverance is so profoundly universal. No matter where we are born, what language we speak, or what culture we inherit, we understand what it means to face a challenge. We know the feeling of long nights spent working toward a dream. We know the ache of failure followed by the decision to rise again. Perseverance is a story that every human being carries in their heart, because to live is to struggle, and to struggle is to endure. Think of the farmer who plants seeds in harsh soil, believing that if he tends to them, they will one day bear fruit. Think of the student who studies by candlelight because electricity is unreliable, holding on to the hope that knowledge will open doors. Think of the athlete who trains in obscurity, pushing through pain and fatigue, with nothing but faith in a future victory. None of them may speak the same language, yet each understands the language of perseverance. It is written in sweat, in sacrifice, and in the relentless refusal to give up. Perseverance is also timeless. Generations before us built their lives on it. Our ancestors crossed oceans, worked long hours, endured hardships, and made sacrifices we now stand upon. They did not always have recognition, but they had perseverance. And it is that perseverance that carried forward their dreams, their legacies, and their hope for a better tomorrow. The same spirit lives in us today, guiding us through the uncertainties of modern challenges, reminding us that no matter how difficult the present moment may seem, endurance carries us toward brighter horizons. What makes perseverance so powerful is not just its universality, but its ability to transform weakness into strength. It is not that those who persevere never face failure. Rather, they learn to rise again after each setback. It is not that they never feel doubt. It is that they push through despite doubt. Perseverance takes pain and turns it into progress. It takes rejection and transforms it into redirection. It takes obstacles meant to block us and uses them as stepping stones toward greater achievement. The young woman's act of producing 3 flawless translations under pressure embodies this truth. She could have done the bare minimum and stopped at 1. She could have questioned why she was asked in the first place. Instead, she gave more than what was expected. She used the test not as a wall to stop her, but as a stage to prove her resilience. And in doing so, she spoke a language the CEO and anyone watching could understand without a word being said. The language of perseverance. In every corner of the world, perseverance tells its own stories. The refugee rebuilding a new life in a foreign land. The artist who continues to paint despite rejection after rejection. The single parent who works multiple jobs to give their children opportunities. These are not just individual acts of endurance, they are testaments to the universality of perseverance. They show us that regardless of who we are, the capacity to endure and overcome is within us all. Perseverance unites us because it reflects a shared truth that greatness is not born in comfort, but in persistence. It is the common thread between a farmer, a student, an athlete, a refugee, a parent, and a worker facing a test at her desk. It is the force that reminds us that progress is possible even when the path is long and uncertain. It is the bridge that connects us across differences, showing that while our struggles may take different forms, our determination speaks the same language. Every life is filled with challenges, moments that test our patience, stretch our endurance, and force us to confront what we are truly made of. Yet the defining question is not whether we face challenges, but how we choose to face them. Do we see them as barriers meant to stop us, or do we reframe them as opportunities to grow, to prove ourselves, and to discover strength we did not know we had? The young woman who was handed a single page to translate could have seen that moment only as an insult, an unfair hurdle designed to diminish her. And perhaps, in many ways, it was. But instead of letting the challenge close her down, she reframed it. She looked at what was meant to be a roadblock and saw a chance to showcase her brilliance. She understood something profound. That the way we interpret a challenge can be just as important as the challenge itself. This lesson echoes far beyond a single story. All around us are people who take what life throws at them and use it as fuel for growth. Think of the scientist who endures failure after failure in the lab but continues to experiment, knowing that each misstep brings her closer to discovery. Think of the small business owner who sees a market collapse, not as the end, but as a moment to reinvent and innovate. Think of the student who faces rejection letters from universities and uses them not as reasons to give up, but as motivation to study harder, apply again, and push forward. Each of these people has taken adversity and reframed it into opportunity. Reframing challenges does not mean ignoring hardship. It does not mean pretending that pain, injustice, or difficulty do not exist. Rather, it means choosing to respond to those realities with perspective and creativity. It means asking, what can I learn here? How can this moment sharpen me instead of break me? How can I turn what was meant to hold me back into something that propels me forward? This shift in mindset is not easy, but it is transformative. The greatest achievements in history are built on this principle. Consider the story of Thomas Edison, who famously said he had not failed, but found thousands of ways that did not work before inventing the light bulb. Consider Nelson Mandela, who spent decades imprisoned but emerged with a vision for reconciliation rather than revenge. Consider Malala Yousafzai, who faced violence for daring to pursue education but turned her struggle into a global movement for girls' rights. Each of these individuals was confronted with challenges that could have ended their journey. But instead of surrendering, they reframed their trials as opportunities to create change, to inspire others, and to achieve the extraordinary. Reframing challenges also strengthens character. It teaches resilience, discipline, and humility. It helps us realize that setbacks are not permanent stops, but temporary redirections. When we view obstacles as opportunities, we shift our focus from what we cannot control to what we can control. That perspective allows us to keep moving forward even when the path is uncertain. It creates a mindset where failure becomes feedback, where criticism becomes fuel, and where hardship becomes training for a future breakthrough. The young woman's choice to translate the page not only once, but 3 times reflects this spirit. She could have done the bare minimum and considered the task complete. Instead, she reframed the moment as an opportunity to go beyond expectations, to rise above doubt, and to turn what was meant as a limitation into her platform. She did not allow the test to define her. She defined the test. That act of reframing transformed a challenge into a victory. For all of us, the call is clear: not always be fair. We will face setbacks that sting, tests that feel unjust, and obstacles that seem immovable. But within each of those lies the seed of opportunity. Opportunity to show resilience, prove to ourselves what we are capable of, and to inspire those who watch us persevere. When we learn to reframe challenges in this way, we discover that adversity is not the enemy of growth. It is the path to it. Life is a story. Each of us holds a pen in our hands. Though we may not always choose the opening chapters, we carry the power to shape the chapters yet to come. For of the next page is powerful because it reminds us that the future is not fixed. It is written through the choices we make today, through the courage we summon in moments of trial, through the vision we carry for a better tomorrow. When the young woman was handed that single page, it became more than an assignment. It became a symbol of how the world sometimes tests us in ways that feel small, condescending, or even unjust. But her response, to translate not in one language but three, turned that page into a canvas of possibility. She reminded us that each page of life is an invitation. We can write bitterness, or we can write brilliance. We can scribble frustration, we can inscribe resilience. What she demonstrated was the power to shape the narrative, to decide what the next page would say about her. And this is a truth for all of us. Every individual, every community, every generation is entrusted with blank pages. The question is not whether we are given them. The question is what we choose to write on them. Do we let fear, division, and despair dictate our story, or do we choose to fill those pages with hope, perseverance, and unity? The answer lies not in distant leaders or faceless systems, but in us, in the decisions we make when no one is watching, in the way we respond to adversity, in the courage we summon to do what is right when it is not easy. Throughout history, ordinary people have chosen to write extraordinary pages. The marchers who walked across bridges in the name of justice, the educators who opened schools in places where ignorance was enforced, the workers who labored tirelessly, not only to provide for their families, but to give their children a chance at something greater. These were not people who waited for someone else to write the next chapter. They picked up the pen themselves. They showed us that progress is not a gift handed down. It is a story written line by line, action by action, sacrifice by sacrifice. The metaphor of the page also teaches us humility and responsibility. A page is limited. It cannot hold everything, which means we must choose wisely what to write. Each action we take, each word we speak, each decision we make becomes part of the record. We cannot control how others will interpret it, but we can control the integrity with which we live it. If we choose to write with courage, compassion, and commitment, we leave behind pages that inspire rather than discourage, that uplift rather than diminish, that build rather than destroy. The future belongs not to those who wait for the perfect story to unfold, but to those who are willing to write amidst uncertainty. Life rarely gives us neat plots or tidy resolutions. Instead, it gives us challenges, disruptions, and questions that seem too large to answer. But that is where our role as authors becomes most vital. It is in those messy, uncertain moments that the most powerful chapters are written, the ones that remind future generations what was possible when people refused to give up. The young woman's page was literal, but for us it is metaphorical. Each day we rise, we are given a fresh page. What will we inscribe on it? Will we use it to complain about circumstances, or will we use it to create solutions? Will we allow others to write our narrative for us, or will we claim authorship of our own lives? The answer is not just personal, it is collective. Because when enough of us choose to write pages of hope, courage, and perseverance, together we form volumes that change the course of history. The next page is ours to write. It is unwritten, unformed, and unlimited in its possibility. It calls for imagination, for bravery, for a willingness to believe that the story of tomorrow can be better than the story of yesterday. It asks us not only to pick up the pen, but to write with intention, to write with vision, to write with a belief that our story matters. This story began with a single page, a moment that could have been dismissed as small, even insignificant. A young woman, underestimated, was handed a challenge meant to measure her worth. But instead of shrinking back, she rose forward. Instead of accepting limitations, she expanded possibilities. Her 3 translations were more than words. They were proof. Proof that talent cannot be confined by prejudice, that dignity cannot be diminished by doubt, and that the human spirit cannot be silenced by skepticism. From that page grew lessons that echo across every life.